Hey, it's Aunt Fanny. Let's make some amazing ham and bean soup. I got this recipe from Chef Billy Parisi. I love watching him cook. He makes everything look so easy. So today we're going to see if it's really just that easy. So first of all, it needs 64 ounces of broth. I didn't have broth, so I'm just going to make my own out of bouillon cubes. So now I'm putting 64 ounces of water in this pot and 8 chicken bouillon cubes, into this pot, and I'm going to boil it and let those break down and just make my own chicken broth to go into these beans. So I'm going to get that started and then we'll move on to a few things. And last night I went ahead and soaked the beans overnight for about 24 hours. I took some navy beans and I soaked them in water in a bowl overnight, and this is what they look like today. This recipe can be found at www.billyparisi.com. We're going to start by putting 3 tablespoons of unsalted butter into a Dutch oven, and then I'm going to add 1 large yellow onion diced into that, and I'm going to caramelize this for about 30 to 40 minutes. And while this caramelizes, I'm going to take that time to cut up the celery, carrots, garlic, and all those other vegetables to add to it after they've caramelized. So they're going to sit here and cook for about 30 to 40 minutes on low. Squirrel, does anybody else have to have their sink emptied of all dishes before they can start cooking? That is something I've always had to do. Got to do the dishes before I can start to cook. I also like to gather up all of my ingredients into one area before I begin to cook. That way I know that I'm prepared for what I'm getting ready to cook. Other little quirks I have is this little thing. I love this little bag holder. You're going to see it a lot in my videos. What I'm doing here is gathering up all of the peels and scraps to my onions, and I put those in a Ziploc bag and I put it in the freezer with all the other scraps of carrots and celery and garlic and so on and so forth, so that when I do make a homemade bone broth or a broth, I use these scraps to give it great flavor. Next, we're just going to cut up all this celery. We're going to gather up all those ends and pieces and put those into the bag to go into the freezer for the broth later. And the celery, I'm just going to dice up into nice bite-sized pieces. Next, we're going to start working on these carrots. We're going to peel them, cut their little ends off. We're going to bag those up as well. Also, the recipe only called for 2 medium carrots, but these ones were really tiny, so I went ahead and did 5 of them. So again, I'm adding those to my bag that I keep in the freezer. Also inside of that bag that has all the carrots and celery and things are my onions and my garlic are in individual bags to try to help stop the spread of flavors intermixing. I'm going to go ahead and crush up some garlic and then dice it up real fine. And so into those caramelized onions is going to be carrots, celery, and garlic. The last little thing about this little green bag stand is that it'll fold up flat and you can just stick it in your silverware drawer. I'm going to check in on these onions. They were cooking a little bit slow, so I had to turn up the heat just a little bit to try to get them going. Now we're going to go back to this ham. I got a great deal on this ham. I only paid $8.80 for a 10-pound ham. It was on sale just before the holidays, and with the price of food right now, any of this stuff is just a real steal. So that saved me $19 for a 10-pound ham. That was amazing. So good deal. Good find. So I'm just going to go and cut off the pieces since I'm not going to roast it as an entire ham. I'm going to cut it from the bone, and then I'm going to cut off where you can see the skin and the fat, and I'm going to try to eliminate as much fat and skin as I can and just kind of dice up the actual meat of the ham and then use those dice pieces, about 2 pounds of it, into the soup. And then I will save the large bone and any of these extra pieces. And this ham should allow me to actually make 2 soups, because I'll end up with a smaller bone and then a larger bone, and then there'll be more ham meat on this than I can put into this one soup. So for $8.80, I'm going to be able to get 2 soups out of it, which is really a great deal, especially right now. So bonus. So I'm just going to keep sawing on this thing and just try to get as much as I can off. And then I'm going to bag up that larger bone and I'm going to stick it in the freezer, and any other extra ham meat, and put it in the freezer for another time to be able to whip this out and cook up another pot. And I might find another recipe that uses a nice ham and ham bone. So that would be really good. So I'm just going to dice it up into bite-sized pieces, put it all in a dish. About 2 pounds is what the recipe calls for. I just kind of filled up a bowl for whatever I felt like would fit in my pot. I forgot to catch it on camera, but I added the carrots and celery and garlic to the onions. And then I went ahead and cooked it for 4 to 5 minutes over low medium heat. And so as you see here, they've been cooking for a little bit. And then it says to deglaze the pan with white Chardonnay. I don't keep wine in the house. So what I did is I just got a little bit more chicken broth, and I'm going to put about a half a cup of chicken broth in there to deglaze that. And then we're going to cook that until there's only about 2 to 3 tablespoons of liquid left in the bottom of that. And once that happens, then we can go ahead and add the ham and the beans. So I'm going to go ahead and rinse the beans, pour all that water off that they've been soaking in all night, and just rinse them with a little bit of water. I'm not going to be too awful particular right now about any of this. And then those beans and ham, and then the broth and thyme are all going to go in the pot. Now the recipe called for a couple extra things, such as Parmesan rind, and it actually called for fresh thyme. I didn't have fresh thyme, so I just went ahead and used the thyme that I had, which was a dried thyme in my seasoning cabinet. There were a couple substitutions I did throughout this recipe, such as the Chardonnay. I replaced that with a chicken broth, and then also I did not even use a Parmesan rind. I made my own chicken broth instead of buying it. I used a dried thyme instead of fresh. And then at the very end, it asked for a white wine vinegar, just like 1.5 tablespoons. I just used a white distilled vinegar, and it just gives that little extra kick that at the end once the soup is completely done. And I really like the flavor that it gives. So a little different than what the recipe says, but I think it still turns out fantastic. So here I am, I'm adding my thyme. I used up all the rest of the thyme that was in my bottle, which is, I think, a metaphor for my life. I'm just out of time. We have everything in the pot now. We just put the lid on it and we let it sit and cook on low for about 90 to 120 minutes. And I cooked it for about 1.5 hours by the end of this video, and the beans could have used probably that extra 30 minutes. So here's my bones that I took from that ham and the extra ham meat and the fat. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with that fat, but I think I'll do something with it. I'm going to throw those things in the freezer. Here I am 1.5 hours later checking on this soup, and it looks delicious. It smells delicious, and it is so good. Here's me adding the vinegar, or faking it, because I'd already added it and forgot to put it on video. So I'm adding some salt and pepper. I actually added a lot more salt and pepper than what that's showing. And then just about 1.5 tablespoons of the white distilled vinegar, a little different than what the recipe calls for. It could taste better with the actual thing, but it looks so good and it tastes just really great. I don't think that there's a recipe from Chef Billy that looked so awfully complicated that he hasn't broken down into being a very basic step-by-step manner that I have been able to be successful in creating meals that I have never cooked before. So I'm super grateful for the way that he teaches, and I'm just here to encourage you to be brave, try a new recipe, try something new, find a chef that you really enjoy watching, and try a new meal. Try something on your family, see if they like it, expand your horizons. This is such a great, yummy, hearty meal for winter. It just looks so good. Throw a little Tabasco on there, and wow, it'd be amazing. So here we go. I don't look very happy, but I promise you it smells so good. Here it is. It's going in. I'm happy. I'm excited. I promise. All right, here we go. Yep, it's so good. It was a little bit hot in the mouth, but man, it was good. Go ahead and give it a shot, guys. And now's the part where I'm supposed to say, follow me, subscribe to me, like, comment, do all those things. Check out my other videos. Love you guys. Thanks. Bye.